Today's podcast is sponsored by Fire Facilities Incorporated, expert engineers, designers, and manufacturers of steel training towers, burn rooms, and mobile units that are all made in the USA. Welcome back to 3-Point Firefighter. Today, my guest is Jason Hoevelmann. Now, Jason Hoevelmann is a career fire chief for the Florissant Valley Fire Protection District, and he's been a career firefighter for 26 years. Chief Hoevelmann lectures and presents nationally on leadership, management, command and tactics, and he's a contributor to fire engineering. He also serves on the FDIC advisory board, and he's co-owner of Engine House Training. He has written 2 books, No Exception Leadership and The Company Officer. And we're going to talk about a little bit of one of those today. Chief Hoevelmann, thank you for being on my show, brother.
You're welcome. Thank you for the kind words, and thanks for having me here. I'm excited and really honored you to ask. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I want to get into your book here in a little bit. Love the book. But I'd like to start off with, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got into the fire service and where you ended up?
Yeah. So I had a cousin. I lived and grew up in a rural town about an hour outside of St. Louis called Sullivan. And I had a cousin at a very young age who was about 8 years older than me. And so he was a junior firefighter, and he was kind of my idol. And that's who I wanted to be when I grew up. And so I would tag along with him to the firehouse and watch him go off to calls and tell stories. And so when I turned 13, I became a junior firefighter, and this is all I've ever done. This is it. So I don't regret a day of it. And really appreciative for the volunteer time. It taught me a lot of lessons and really provided me a lot of opportunities. And so that's it in a nutshell. It was really that cousin of mine, Tom. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1991 from a vehicle accident. But that was it. I wanted to be him. And then once I got in, just the smell of the firehouse and just the noises and, this is in the mid 80s. And so it was, it just never was unappealing. It always drew you in, and it was like, I felt at home there, even at that young age.
So when you joined, did you plan on being a chief? Is that like one of your goals, or did you just kind of stumble into it like I did in my position?
So ironically, later on, I became our volunteer department's chief at a really young age. I was really too young. I didn't do the best job. And I served my 2 years and got out of there, learned a lot. I learned a ton from that experience, but I was just too young and immature to really be good at that job. So when I got to be a career firefighter, I don't know that I pursued being a chief. Certainly it's always, what if, what if I could do this or what if I could do that? And quite honestly, at my current department where I've been for 22 years, when I just started preparing for growth and opportunities and quit worrying about promotions, because we had a rough spell at our place. I got passed over 3 times and everybody goes through those things. Right. But when I started really focusing on the job, and my love for the job and my passion for the job, opportunities just started to present themselves. And that's just kind of what it was. If my chief before me would have stayed, I'd have been content being a battalion chief. I just really, I guess, matured into the profession and had good influences, obviously inside and outside of our organization. But I kind of got an idea a couple years before he retired that he was kind of pushing me that direction, but it's a different job than being on the floor for sure.
Well, I'd say it's a different job just being a battalion chief and a chief, right? So when you were a battalion chief, I guess you ran a crew, yeah?
Yeah. I ran a shift. We're 3 houses with ALS transport. We run this year. We're going to probably eclipse 14,000 calls, and we run. We're busy, and it's all relative, right? So there's people busier than us and not busier than us, but we we probably get 130, 140 fires a year, somewhere in there. So we get it. And that includes, we have automatic aid. We're really close to our neighbors. So we all respond to each other's fires to get the number of personnel and equipment on the scene. So, but we're pretty active.
Oh, wow. Absolutely. Now, you're very passionate, obviously, about leadership and management. Has this something that you've always been since you've been in the fire service, or was it kind of late in the fire service? What actually made you want to start getting on the national stage and presenting your message?
So that's two different things. As far back as when I was in school, I was always interested in leadership. I was in athletics, and the team concept and being put into some positions by coaches. But at the same time, I was a student council, but that's not really where my itch for it started. There was a company, and it's still here in St. Louis County, called Merritt's. It was a really big company back then, but they came out, I don't know, once or twice a year with young leaders in our school, and gave like little workshops. And then we got to we would like mirror different leaders in our community at their jobs during as part of this process. And that was when it occurred to me that I had an interest in leadership and management and the things that you can do with that if you can learn how to do it and do it successfully. The second part of that is that I also learned that you can be a leader and not have any rank or formal title, and that was always very appealing to me, and something that I tried to utilize, and I think to some degree I was effective at times, and other times I wasn't. But that's how you learn, I think, and that's how you grow. As far as being on the national stage, that all just, I got lucky, and some of the right people came into my life and my career at the right time. And honest to goodness, the way it started is, I told you we had some rough years at my current place. And due to that environment, I let all my certifications lapse. I was so frustrated, and so everybody has these down.
Yeah.
Nobody's just everything's going. We all have these ebbs and flows. And then a year or so of sulking and being miserable, I got back to loving the job in spite of people that didn't in my sphere. And then to get my instructor 2 back, I had to create a 4-hour class. And I created that 4-hour class. Basically, it was called Firefighter's Own Worst Enemy, which is really how I got that. I had a blog site and all that from that, but it all was born from the things that happened leading up to that point in my career, with the frustrations and not being appreciated and not having necessarily the best leadership around us, both formally and informally. And so I wrote the class. At the same time, I was running the Firefighter 1 and 2 program at my volunteer department, which helped me get back into, my thing. So I got my instructor 2, ran a Firefighter 1 and 2 program, and I wanted to do something special for these guys, because they're all volunteers. 99% of them are never going to get paid to do that job. And, and they took a lot of time and sacrifice to get through the program and whatnot. So I basically cold called Bobby Halton through an email and said, "Hey, you don't know me, you've never heard of me, but I'm running this Firefighter 1 and 2 program in Sullivan, Missouri," which you've probably never heard of either. And I just kind of went through what I just explained to you about the attendees of this thing, and asked if he would give a little keynote and hand out the certifications for those folks. And without blinking an eye, he said, "Yeah." And got to know him a little bit and stayed in touch. And he said, "Hey, you ought to submit for FDIC." And so I did. That's when you had to do it with paper. You had to actually mail it in and stuff. And so I got in.
First try?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Like I told you, I got lucky. I mean, honest to goodness, it wasn't, it certainly wasn't my skill and talents. It was just, the stars aligned, and I got in. But what that did do was it put a lot of pressure on me to get better. and to provide better classes and to provide better content. And then I wrote I wrote an article for Fire Engineering before that did get published. And then I had the blog site before that, which he kind of knew. It was called the Fire EMS Blog Network. I don't know if you remember that or not, but Brotherhood Instructors had one on there, and the Fire Critic, and Rhett Flights had his thing. I mean, it was like really early in those things. And so, that was kind of how I got into that. And as you move through those things, you meet people, and they help you and they guide you. And, here I am talking on this podcast. I've been incredibly lucky and blessed, and I really can't take a lot of credit for it.
You said something earlier about, you in your career, you had ebbs and flows, and, not everybody's going straight up. Right before I started this podcast, I assumed that the people like, you and Aaron Fields and Jared Sergi, Joshua, all these people, great, heavy hitters in our industry, never had a down day. And I know it's not realistic to think that way, but I had several. I had a couple real bad downs, really upset with how things were being done. I felt like there wasn't great leadership, but the bottom line was I was getting in my own way. So I kind of thought I was unique, but the more I talk to people like you, they all have that same story. And I just love hearing it because I'm like, all right, maybe I'm not as abnormal as I thought I was.
No.
It's hard not to do this amount of time in the job. And I realize this now and have those downs. The question is, how long are you going to stay down? How long, until you get back up? And I remember, I've told that story a couple times on this podcast. I literally woke up one day and realized you're in your own way, nobody else. You're being the asshole. And from that day forward, I fell back in love with the job. And I realized one important thing for me is now this was back in the day. This was when I wasn't thinking straight. Here's what I realized. I cannot like my fire department, but be in love with the fire service.
Yeah.
And once I could make that differentiation, I was like, okay, this works. This works for me. And that's how I got where I'm at too. So I love hearing that, people that write books and speak nationally had those downtimes too. Talking about leadership, another mistake I made early in my career was thinking leadership was a science and not an art.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to think it's a little bit of both. But what's a common mistake in leadership? You know so many people around the country. You speak all around the country. What's your view on modern day fire service and leadership, mistakes and things that they are doing right?
I think you're right with that. It's both. I think it's like anything else in the fire service. It's not all or it's not always or never, right? And I think leadership's that way too. I think if I was going to nail, leadership challenges in today's fire service down, there's a few things that come to mind that you learn. I learned that you mature through your career, just like you do as a person, most people. But you mature through your career. And I think things that I thought were really important to leadership 20 years ago probably aren't as impactful as what I thought they were. I think probably the biggest challenge people face, or I don't want to, or mistake or whatever in leadership, is that they think they have to have all the right answers, and that they can't have those chinks in their armor, and people see those, and people, there's got to be some vulnerability for the best of leaders. They've got to have those bad days. They've got to have they're going to make mistakes, and for leaders to accept that. But what that does for you is it creates empathy for the people that you are leading and supervising and managing, or whatever those things are. And that is a lost and forgotten word. We hear it more now. The last year or so, I've heard it more than I have in the last 15 years. But I think having that empathy based on your past experiences and knowing what people are going through allows you to relate with your people. It allows you to build relationships and trust. Now, it doesn't mean that you allow people to get away with things. It doesn't mean you don't hold people accountable. All it means is that you're a little slower to talk. You're a little more discerned in your approach. You take a little more time to get all of the facts before you react. I like to tell people respond rather than react to challenges and crisis or whatever it is. And I think if they can do those things, and it's learned, a lot of us don't have that built-in capacity to be more patient. On my computer screen at work, I've got two screens. And because I'm not always patient, I don't always wait for all of the facts. I do get emotional. And so on my thing, I just listen hard, be measured, have discernment and empathy. I've got those stickers on my computer screen at work as reminders so that, because none of us are perfect. I've never met even my idols. We're all making mistakes and a little screwed up, so those would be the things I think to really concentrate on is, treat people like people and accept things. I don't want to say accept things, but understand what your role is. It's not just, you don't always have to be right. You're not always going to be right.
Right.
And so when you have that empathy, that allows you to work through those mistakes. It allows you to work through those vulnerabilities, not only your own, but the ones that you're leading, that you're setting an example in that regard.
So I've always said, you could probably teach sympathy, but you really can't teach empathy.
Yeah.
Either you have it or you don't. How important is that when it comes to leadership?
Oh, it's critical. It's critical when you've got somebody that makes an honest mistake, even if it really costs money and all those things. Just think you can discipline people and still be respectful. You can be honest with people and have really hard conversations, but still people can have dignity after the fact. You don't have to tear people down to get things changed. And I think the empathy comes really, it's more about building the relationship, knowing what somebody's going through at home, knowing what somebody's dealt with family or with their own personal lives, and being able to go, okay, well, it's not an excuse, okay, but we're going to get you the help, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and being able to communicate that, I think, is really important. Empathy, to me, is just understanding. It doesn't relieve us from holding people accountable, and it doesn't relieve us or change the fact that we're going to get mad or that we're going to be frustrated. All it does is it allows us to look for better solutions that solve maybe a bigger problem that's out there that maybe is not obvious to us.
Another thing I've learned in my ripe old age is whenever you're presented with an issue, a problem, especially if it's a personnel problem, is not reacting immediately, but taking time and absorbing the information. For example, I've worked with captains that will just jump my shit right then and there without knowing. What is it? Walt Whitman says, be curious, not judgmental. Mm-hmm. And I've had those captains and chiefs that are just reactionary. Instantly, they want to fix the problem right away. I'm mad at you, blah, blah, blah. But some of the best leaders I've had, they're like, I tell you what, let me stew on this, let me think about this, and I'm going to get back to you. And I think that's a better approach, but I also think it's very difficult, to your point earlier. We're people, we're human. We have buttons just like everybody else. Yeah. As you've gone up in rank, is that a skill set you've really had to hone, or do you feel like you've had that pretty good early on? Because reading your book, I feel like you've kind of had a pretty decent grab on that.
So I had a grasp on it, but I didn't always practice it. I had to learn to practice it better, Yeah. But I think I've gotten better at it. I think I'm more aware of it. An example is, a few years ago, right after I made chief, we brought in an outside speaker who's a mentor of mine from out of state, very prominent, successful, retired fire chief who I just super smart, genius guy. And it was
who's this?
Jeff Johnson from Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah. And got to know him over the years and just think the world of him, as I do many, many other people. But, it meant a lot to me that he would come out and spend time with our officers. And we have a mandatory officer development day every year. And this was that. And we have a rule and when you're in class, you're not on your phone, and you're not, there's a certain etiquette that you follow with outside speakers. And I had a captain about 2 rows in front of me the whole morning on the phone, texting. And my initial reaction was, what the hell is wrong with you? You know. And so at a break, and I don't remember if it was lunch, I think it was before lunch, but at a break, I quietly went and pulled his battalion chief aside. And I just said, hey, so-and-so has been on his phone all morning. Can you please have a conversation with him? Make sure, it's not acceptable. And then I got ready to walk out, and I turned around and I said, hey, before you do anything, though, ask him if everything's okay.
And curious, not judgmental.
Yeah. And so at the end of the day, and I leave them, if it's a battalion chief person, they handle that and so on and so forth. And so at the end of the day, what had happened was the member had been going through a pretty nasty divorce for a few years, and he was supposed to be in court that morning, or there was a court hearing of some sort, and he had a mandatory training. And so he was texting his attorney while he was in class. So didn't excuse that he shouldn't have been doing it. So the battalion chief's like, listen, that's cool. Let me know ahead of time. You step out, handle your business. But it all worked out. But it was that growth. When I said that I've had a grasp of it, but I haven't always practiced it, that was a moment that, I need to add that, hey, ask if everything's okay,
right.
And those are the little moments that you hope that the officers involved learn, that they'll do the same kinds of things and have the same, approach to that. But it was like, oh yeah, this is what I talk about.
Oh, ain't that bad if you get caught doing something that you wrote against, basically, or spoke against, and you're doing. And surely your local firefighters at your fire department, they totally let you get away with all that, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no. Number one, they don't listen to anything I say. I still have to bring experts in from the outside to
right.
preach our message, which it is it just how it works. But no, they don't give me any slack.
Yeah, no man's a prophet in their own land, right?
Not at all. No. No way.
Now, you said you looked into being at FDIC, right? First shot, which is great. And you've been there since. And you're also on the advisory board. So what do you do for the advisory board? And
not a lot.
Year long?
No, I'm kidding. No, not really. Not really. So the role that I have is pretty minimal. They like us to put that in our bios, and I'm happy to do so. And it's an honor to do it. But every summer, there's a group of us, and it's a pretty big group. It's like just 4 or 5. I mean, it's a big group of instructors and fire service professionals that review all of the submissions, and then we grade them before they go to the next step. Our group doesn't pick and choose. We just give a grade and send it on to the smaller committee that actually picks the classes.
Okay, so you're the first filter, basically.
We are, yeah.
So you're like an American Idol. You're not, the 3 that are judging
No.
before that you don't get to see on TV.
The ones that nobody cares about. Yeah. Yeah.
So what, if you get to go through all these classes and you have to grade them, what are you looking for that's like immediately grabs your attention, like, oh, this is probably going to be good? Or do you see some that go, ooh, I don't know about that? What are some of those? Not names of classes or people, obviously.
Right, yeah.
But just things in general that you see, you're like, okay, that's pretty cool.
So, first off, I want to know where they work. I want to know what their experience is and how it relates to the topic. If a person doesn't put where they're from or where they work or how many years on the job they have, it's already a mark against them, because I want to know, what are you backing all this up with? And then it's an instructors conference. So anything that is related to instructor development or teaching or and enhancing instructor skills, that's always a bonus and gets extra attention. I like specifics. I like if the description and the purpose and objectives are real general. I have a tough time with those because I want to know that you have in-depth knowledge of that particular topic. In generalities, it's hard to assume that. And then I want to know what other, what are you, where else have you taught this class? Where else have you delivered it? What other things have you done? Things of that nature. And then you give a grade and send it on. Yeah.
So do you ever get like a guy that wants to put on a fire department leadership class and he's been on the job 3 years?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting because, fire engineering, it's right now we're in a weird cycle with the magazine and the conference with submissions because everybody's writing and teaching about leadership and management. Mm-hmm. And if people pay attention to my stuff at all, I don't know that I've ever had a leadership article published. Almost all of my stuff's operational, interestingly. Mm-hmm. And probably 50% or more of the classes I've done at FDIC have been operational. But because you look at who the heavy hitters are on leadership at FDIC, you're talking about Lasky and Viscuso and Von Opp, this ton, incredible, amazing people teaching that. But man, we get so many submissions for that, and there's just not enough room for all of them. And if you want to increase your odds of getting into FDIC, tactics, operations, and instructor development, those are the three things that, and don't worry about if you think someone else has taught it. Don't worry about if someone else has written about it. Everybody's got their own unique perspective and experiences. And I would, highly recommend you write, articles to those two. They'll either get, either for the digital, the online stuff or the magazine, but, they really want those foundational things of what firefighting is about. Leadership's great. I've done well with it, but the upcoming classes I've got, are about 50-50 leadership and operations. And everybody's got an experience to share with those things. So just because you've read an article similar to what your idea is, it doesn't matter. For 100 years, that magazine's been around or something, it's always the same stuff. It's just a different little spin to it, or a different story, or a different call that you had that you learned this or that. I would highly encourage you to submit those things.
Have you had any like Rudy style submissions, like somebody submits year after year after year, they don't get in, and then it comes across your desk and you're like, finally, this guy's got the right stuff and he's going to get in?
I don't know. The only reason I say that is because I don't remember all the names, simply because, I think this year I had somewhere between 250 and 300 submissions that I was grading. So it's really hard to keep up with it. And I also don't grade every category. So I don't get truck work typically. I don't get, I don't know. You basically have 2 or 3 topics that you participate in.
Truck work. That's just where they need break window.
So they ask you, so they ask you what your, I don't want to say expertise is in, but what your experience is in. And we don't do a lot of truck stuff. So you're never going to see me put my stamp on. I know what truck work is and stuff, but I opted out of that topic because I'm not the expert in that.
Well, chances are you actually graduated high school, therefore you're smarter than truck people.
I know. If Champa was here, he'd go, "Oh yeah."
I actually got to meet him. We were teaching we got to teach some live fire at the Rock, and he was walking around, and I was like, I fanboy over all my heroes in the fire service. Yeah. He's like, that's my champion, just literally walking.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Oh, I finally, after 3 days, talked to him, but I'm sure I sounded stupid. You're my champion. Probably something like that.
He's a good guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's funny, super funny.
Yeah, he seemed to be like a really nice guy, and I hope we get to go back up there and teach some more because it was pretty cool. And we got to meet Chief Frank Lieb.
He's great. Yeah,
dude, he was. We went up there to teach live fire, basement fire, and of course is he still the interim chief of Randall Island? I don't know if he's interim. Either way. He had his white stuff on, and he put on his bunker gear, and you could see his tie and his little collar brass and everything.
Yeah,
and he did the stuff. He did it all.
Yeah,
I was like, man, just blew me away.
Amazing.
He
all those guys are great.
Is amazing.
Yeah,
I didn't know what to expect from FDNY. That's probably not true. I probably expected a chip or something on the shoulder. Every single person treated us like gold, and the nicest people I've ever met in the fire service. Well, definitely one of the nicest people I ever met in the fire service was at FDNY. Cool.
Yeah, they're great. They're great up there.
So I want to talk about your book. I know you've written 2 books, and I haven't read Company Officer yet. Mm-hmm. Guaranteed, I'm going to read it. So every year, this whole podcast. Let me back up. This whole podcast. This isn't me. I don't want to do a podcast. I'm nervous. I don't like. If it was up to me, I'd stay in my little room with nothing. Right. So one year every time I go to the beach, I take a leadership book and I try to read it on the beach. So 3 years ago, I took Jared Sergi's No Nonsense Leadership.
Great guy.
Blew me away. Fantastic. And I kept thinking, wow, this guy took all these ideas and he put himself out there for the world to see, and how strong you had to be. And I loved his book. And that's where this podcast came out of. I'm like, well, if he can put himself out there, maybe I should try. I'd like to be part of the national conversation. So I had him on here. He was my first guest. And he's the only, I've got a lot of great leadership books. Got one right here. I got a bunch in my office. But yours, that was this summer's. That's what I took. I bought it and I threw it. Here's what I do. I find a book I like, throw it somewhere in this office, and I leave it there. And I go, okay, I look forward to reading this. I'm going to read it on the beach. There's nothing better than having a cold beer on the beach, reading a fire book. So I went down there. We're down there for 2 weeks, Siesta Key, and I didn't read your book for the first week. I forgot it. It was tucked away. It never occurred to me. That last week I was there, I saw it. I was like, oh, shit, I need to read this. And again, I was excited. Don't get me wrong, but I wasn't
I get it.
I got to read it right now.
Yeah.
Again, just like Jared Sergi's book, I was 10 minutes into this, and I knew it was solid gold, and I could not wait to read more and more and more. And so, like I said, the biggest compliment I can give any author is when I take their book and I put tabs in it like this, and when I highlight it like I do, and the dog ear the pages, and then my book is all, because I carry it with me every day to the firehouse. And I love this book. This book spoke to me. It is such a fantastic book on leadership. Now, I usually say I hate to read people their own words, but I'm getting out of that because I kind of like it, So I'd like to read a couple things and that really hit home with me. Now, I'm not done mangling this book. I usually go through it a couple of times, especially winter when I'm really, really bored. I'll pick a book up and I'll go through it again and I'll find more nuggets of awesomeness in it. So I want to ask you about a couple things, if that's okay. First off, before we get started, what happened? What made you want to write this exact book?
That's an interesting story. So I before I was ever promoted at work, I started a Facebook page called The New Fire Officer. And I would put in anecdotes and little things and almost even today, I think that page is over 10 years old on Facebook. And I would just about everything that gets posted is what is the movies based on true stories, and just about everything in there is either something I'm going through or something somebody else is going through or a question that got asked of me and part of a conversation. And I never word it that way. I mean, you'd never pick that up really by watching it. And so I had people saying, hey, we can't get to all of your stuff because, how Facebook works. It just keeps it just
Scrolling
stacks,
down.
stacks, stacks.
Yeah.
So I went through, and I said, and at the same time, I had prostate cancer. And so I had surgery and had it removed, and I was sitting at home and I was going stir crazy. And it was just happened to be at the same time that somebody had said, "Hey, I can't find you said something about this one time and I can't find it." And so I just sent a response back, and it wasn't the exact post, but it was something, similar. And like, man, I wish you put this all in one place or whatever. So I literally sat in my recliner, and I started typing. But I knew I didn't want it to be like something you read from front to back. I didn't want to make a story. I just wanted like a conversation almost, on the front bumper or in a kitchen table, or somebody ask a question about a specific leadership thing. And that was what I want now. And so I put that together. Now the numbers, it's just numbered 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. I had read a book some years before that called Up the Organization by a guy named, I think Robert Townsend was his name. And he had taken over Avis rental cars back in the late 60s, somewhere in there. And he wrote a management book and called Up the Organization. Great book. I recommend it. And he formatted it A, B, C, D. So any topic that started with A was in the front of the book. And that's kind of how I set the book up, was because that book was really easy to read and I got a lot out of it. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do with this book. And so that's how I did it. And that's where it came from.
Oh, it's excellent. It is excellent. And I'm going to, like I said, so the first thing I do is when I find something, I bend the page. So I know when I go back. So then I go back and I highlight my favorite part. And then the third time I put this in there so I can find it easily, because I know it's important. It's something, the things I'm about to bring up, the things that I experienced in my department.
Yeah.
So I can refer back to this. So I'm going to read something to you, your own words again. And I'd love to get your information about it. So the biggest mistake you can make is to shift blame to team members or throw them under the bus. Even if a member is the primary cause for the mistake, you must accept that is yours. When the time is right, you are to take the team member in private, and you can sort out where the extra training, more information, or counseling is needed. This is, to me, is awesome because so many people fail this, and how strong a leader you must be to stand up for your people, even though you know the majority of the problem is on them. What happened that made this make it into the book?
That actually, I saw that happen on more than one occasion, and not necessarily just with me, but I an outsider looking in. But there was a member who was routinely, making mistakes and causing problems. And, whenever we sat in an officers meeting this one time, and everything that was wrong with that crew that got brought up, the officer was continually, well, it's so-and-so, well, that's so-and-so, well, that's so-and-so. Well, it's like, well, who's so-and-so's boss? Who's so-and-so report to? Who's so-and-so supposed to answer to? And it happened on more than one occasion, and it happened by more than one officer in my career, not only in my paid career. I mean, from my almost 30 years well, actually, if you count my volunteer time, over 30 years, but I've seen it happen multiple times. And to be honest, that was one of those things that I swore I'd never do, that I would never purposely or to get myself out of an uncomfortable position, I would never sacrifice one of my own. And that was what that stemmed from.
How hard was that for you in your experiences?
Oh, it's really hard. But I will tell you what it does make you do is it makes you address that because it's not fun. Yeah. It's not comfortable. It can hurt your reputation. It can make people question your ability as an officer. So it does force you to address that problem, that person, because now the owner, unless you want to keep doing that over and over, which you don't, trust me. If you
You don't
do,
go, sorry, Chief, that was me. Sorry, it's on me.
yeah,
Over
no,
and over.
because eventually there's gonna be consequences for that. So what it did in one particular point is it really made me put my foot down on the guy. Yeah.
So this next one is the one when I read this page, because it's early on in the book, this particular one, I folded up it's a special one. I don't know if you tell, but when I fold it double, that's a double whammy for me. That's that's when you punch me right in the gut with knowledge. Had to close the book, and that's when my wife knows. She kind of looks at me. She goes, "You either I'm bored with the book, or she knows I found something good."
Yeah.
And she goes, "You found something good, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." So this is something I want to shout from the rooftops, and I feel like even if I did that, most people just don't comprehend. So
Yeah.
if you allow mediocrity to become commonplace and accepted, you are literally setting up your members, department, and company to fail.
Yeah.
Boom. That is truth.
Yeah.
Truth bomb right there. So how does mediocrity seep into a company or a department?
I don't know how it seeps in. I know it's there. I don't know, I can't tell you how it gets there. I can tell you that when it's there, you see it, and you have a choice to either do something about it or to just go with the flow. And most time people just don't want those confrontations. When I was a captain, and that's kind of where this came from, was I wasn't always popular as an officer. And it wasn't because I treated people poorly, is because I did have a standard. At least I feel this way. There are people, I'm sure, that will tell you differently, that their perspective's different on this. But I felt like I had a standard, and we were going to meet that standard. And I can tell you that there were days that we would come in, new shift, we do 4896, and we would come in, and I would look at the cross lay, and it would look bad, and we would pull it off and repack it. And there people don't like doing that, but I will tell you that probably 90+% of the time, when it didn't look good and we pulled it off, it didn't pull off good,
right?
To repack it. So there were some times when there was another time that and that's in these situations are really where that quote came from, because when I was a captain, there were a couple times that we'd switch out of the spare into our front line or vice versa, and we'd have equipment missing. Or at that time, the way that we checked equipment was pretty lax. And so if it wasn't the right day, there's certain things you just didn't check. And that's mediocrity. To me, I got caught, I got caught not having a CO monitor. I got caught not having ropes on a truck. And so I said, our crew, when we come in the first day, no matter what day it is, the first day, the truck's getting checked, the whole thing, everything. The captain that I relieved that didn't like that. The other crews didn't like that. But
because you found stuff wrong.
We did. And we didn't make a big deal about it, but we fixed it, and, but what I found out later was our crew became pretty proud that we do things different. We had a different standard with that. But it was little things, it was, no gas in a PPV fan. Like I talked about the CO monitor missing, I had to call my battalion chief out at 2:00 in the morning because I forgot to get the seat. We didn't check the truck after we switched. It was just these little things, which is mediocrity. And we didn't make a policy, just my crew did it. Today in my department, that happens on every shift.
Good.
The first day, everything gets checked, everything, which should have been done anyway. I didn't do something special, but we realized that things were getting missed. And as a captain, I can tell you that I took that responsibility pretty seriously. I did not want to be responsible for something bad happening to my people.
Plus, you can't imagine ever that somebody that's trapped in a burning building thinking, I sure hope I get some mediocre firefighters. They want rock stars all the way, right?
Yeah.
So, and I just had this talk today with another battalion chief where we were talking about discipline, and he said, I don't really care about, because uniforms. I brought up uniforms, like people don't wear their uniforms right. He goes,
Yeah.
I don't really care about uniforms, but I do care about this, this, and this. And I said, well, I'm going to disagree with you because my opinion is if somebody can't do the little simple things, how are they going to be expected to do the hard, complicated things? I don't think it is a pick and choose a la carte type of thing. I think either we're professionals or we're not.
Yeah.
Either we're there for the citizens or we're not. Just
Mhm.
let me know who's who so I can play the game accordingly. Just kind of what you're saying. You said, hey,
Yeah.
we're going to check truck out every day.
Yeah. And there were other, there were some other instances that, we drilled every day. Not when I say drill, we didn't like kill ourselves, but I mean, and I sat with them and told them, I'm not doing this because I want to make you miserable. We're doing these things because we have a responsibility, and not only to our community but to your families. I mean, I want you to retire healthy, and I want you to perform well, and I want you to be confident when you go to work, and I want you to be able to perform in very difficult situations. And I never did any, they never did anything I wouldn't. In fact, Bill Guston gave me some advice one time, long before I got promoted. But you've seen it before, right? You have a hands-on training, and your senior members and some of your senior officers hang back, and they go, "Oh, let the new guys do it. Let the new guys do it. We'll watch." And this is all Bill Guston. Bill Guston goes, "Be the first one to do the drill. Be the first, no matter how much time you've got on, you're the officer, be the first one to do the drill." And so what I did was I would take the newest member on our shift or on our crew, and he and I, or she and I, would go first every time. No matter what the drill was, that person and myself went first every time. Accomplished two things, is that it kind of broke the ice for everybody. There wasn't that, everybody's afraid of performing poorly and being watched and all that, which is natural. It eliminated some of that. But the second thing it did was it gave me the opportunity to work with the new person, and kind of monitor their progress and things like that. The side effect that I didn't count on was that after a few months of doing that, I had members of the shift going, "Hey, can I go with the new person today? Can I go first with the new person? Hey, can I?" And so then it became something that was, "Hey, look, can I do that today? Can I do, and then it was not, that whole thing just disappeared. That whole issue went away.
Speaking of mediocrity, something happened today that really impressed me. I guess in my arrogance and ego, I assume somewhere along the lines, when I've got this much time in the fire service, I'm not going to find inspiration below me. I was wrong, totally wrong. I find it every single day. So today, I'm in my office. If I look out across my desk, there's a whole wall of windows that looks out towards a park where a road's in front of me. If I look to my left, I see through the classroom out to the bay. So it's probably, I'm guessing, like 2 o'clock, 2:30. Everybody's kind of calmed down at the firehouse, usually in the afternoons. I don't see a lot of movement anywhere. We hired this new person. He's probably been on 3-4 years, from Florida. Great hire, excellent firefighter, just super nice guy. Well, he comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, Chief, can I get the keys to the tower so I can, go exercise, run up and down the stairs?" That alone, we don't have a wellness program in my department. That alone impressed me. I'm like, "Hey, you get it, man." Gave him the keys, and he went up there. That's all I saw for a couple minutes. Didn't think nothing. I go back to work doing my boring chief computer work. And a couple seconds later, I see him walking in front of me outside wearing an SCBA. Okay. So now he's going up the stairs with an SCBA. Now I'm really impressed. I'm like, go get him. So then out of the corner of my eye, after a couple more minutes, I see him in the bay wearing an SCBA, dragging a 150-pound dummy back and forth. And I guess he's just making circles, cycles. And I just had to go out there and say, "Brother, you inspire me. You absolutely inspire me. That is awesome. That's not mediocre. That is again, 2:30 in the afternoon, firehouse, you're kind of chilling." It just impressed the crap out of me. And all this to say is inspiration is everywhere. It's not just above you. It's not outside your department. It could be inside your department from one of the most junior members.
Yeah. And I think people need to understand that it doesn't take a lot of effort to not be mediocre. You're not killing yourself every day. It's just paying attention to details and a little bit of effort and being engaged and sharing and just doing a little bit of work every day. That's all it takes. It's not going out and just killing yourself and your crew every day. I mean, when I say we drilled, sometimes it was at the kitchen table. Sometimes it was out on the streets. Sometimes it was an hour. Sometimes it was 20 minutes. But we did something every shift. And, but yeah, I don't want people to get the wrong impression that you've got to go, balls to the wall all the time to do that. You don't. You really don't.
A little bit of effort consistently goes a long way. Reading your book could be training. Reading your book and applying this could be training. I mean, it could be anything. Speaking of which, so do you know Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance?
Yeah.
Love Corley Moore. That's my favorite podcast ever. I
just watched it the other night. Yeah.
With Von Oppen on it.
Yeah.
So Corley doesn't know it, but he's my mentor in the podcast business. So
You're doing great.
having a mentor like him, I think I'll get a little bit of success. But I read this, and as soon as I saw it, I kind of giggled too. So number 15, complacency begins with comfort and convenience. Again, little tiny truth bomb, punch you right in the gut. So how many times have you had to deal with complacency in your career for yourself?
I can't count them all. I mean, we navigate to that. We navigate to comfort and convenience. I mean, even now as a fire chief, there's just things I don't want to do. I don't want to have a conversation with somebody. I don't want to, you name it still. I mean, we all deal with it, but I do very much believe that the more we work at making ourselves comfortable and making environments convenient for us, it takes away our purpose and mission to do what best for the people in our community, which means drilling, working out, studying, reading, having conversations, taking care of yourself mentally and physically, all those things. But the minute that we start making excuses or justifications for not getting on the little one, and when I say uncomfortable, we're not, again, these aren't extremes. These are all things people can do, that you can do. It's just being aware that when we start making excuses and justifications to make ourselves happier, to make ourselves more comfortable, to get ourselves more convenient for us, it creeps. It starts in the engine house, but it's going to creep into what we do on every call that we go out on, no matter what it is.
I like telling this story. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning in the firehouse. I walk into the kitchen to get something, and at 10 o'clock in the morning, and there's a guy, been on for a few years, zonked out in a recliner. And it just hit me wrong. And I just yelled out, "Patty Brown." What? It's Patty Brown. And he looked at me. He didn't know who Patty Brown was, which is fine. Patty Brown's kind of my hero, right?
Yeah, right.
And I said, "Look, you need to look up Patty Brown, FDIC. The last thing he said on the radio basically was he denied an order because
we're going up.
We're going up. That's what he said. And he goes, "Okay." And I said, "Well, here's my point. I truly doubt Patty Brown was caught in a sofa or a love seat or recliner at 10 o'clock in the morning." Perspective, man. And he's a great guy. The guy I'm talking about is a great guy.
Right,
I caught him. Right. He caught me on the wrong day. I guess I caught him on the wrong day. But that's all I could think about is like we are doing the same job that Free Truck Patty Brown does. Mm-hmm. We should try to live up to that level. We should respect the fact that we're blessed to do this job. Don't be asleep at 10 o'clock. Don't do it. just don't.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I was a battalion chief and I got a call one day and it was a deal where, hey, this lady called and this is dispatch. They call us and they go, "Hey, this lady called and she's in this apartment complex. Her TV fell off the TV stand. She can't get it back up. Can somebody come do that?" Well, most of us, what's our first instinct is we don't do that. What do you mean I'm going to go pick up a TV, And it was around lunchtime and I took a deep breath and I'm like, honest to goodness, what would my chief do? He said, "Tell her I'll be over. Give me the information on the CAD." And so they sent it to me. I go to this place and I go up and I knock on the door. She goes, "Oh, it's open. Come on in." So I come in. Place is not the most tidy. But this lady is in a wheelchair from MS, and she lives all by herself. She has nobody to help her. She's not in an accessible apartment because it was all she could get. And her entertainment is in the floor. What she does, and I felt like such a jerk, because I was being inconvenienced to go pick up a TV.
Right.
Like I'm so good. I shouldn't have to go do something like that, but when I got there, I felt horrible. I was like, hey, I picked up her TV and set it up and to make sure it all worked. And then I was like, anything else I can do for you? And I mean, she didn't know I felt that way, but it's easy. I could have said no and nobody would have cared. No, I wouldn't have gotten in trouble. And nobody would have cared. But what I have learned is that the community you're in already takes for granted that you're going to put out their fire, you're going to rescue them, and you're the professional fire department, volunteer paid, and that's what they already want you. You're going to do that.
Right.
What I've learned through direct conversations with stakeholders and people in our community, asking them what they expect of our fire department, is to be present and to be a part of the community. Mm-hmm. That's what they expect. That they, outside of the other stuff, they certainly, but that's kind of already on the table, right? But what they want from you is you to be there. Well, no matter what's going on in the community, they want you there. And it's been interesting having these interviews with the people in our community and going, because none of them, not a single one I've interviewed has said, put out my fire, rescue me. In fact, the lady I talked to today goes, we already expect you to do that. We want you to, that shouldn't even be a discussion. But what we want is you to talk to our kids. We want you to be role models and mentors in our community. We want you to be pillars and the people that we can always look up to and trust, and be present at everything that goes on in the community. And it's been really, I encourage you, if you haven't done that in your community, to do it. It's been a very valuable experience for me. But back to the point of the TV, is it took me a total of maybe 30 minutes to go there, pick it up, and drive back.
Right.
But initially, I was too good to go do that.
Well, it reminds me of Brunacini's book, Customer Service. Have you ever had a chance to read that one? It's
a long
amazing.
Time ago. Yeah.
Exactly, a long time ago. It made such an impact on me. I can't say I put it all into play when I read the book, but it stuck with me. And I'd like to think that I've made changes, little career changes, because of that book. And that sounds like it's ripped straight from the book. We're here to serve them, and where we see our service as one thing, our perspective is only emergencies.
Yeah.
For them, an emergency is something different.
It is.
They just need help. They know that we help, and it's an honor that we're known for that. And excuse me, a lot of firefighters are like, well, and this sounds so stupid. I hear it all the time. Well, now they're going to expect us to go pick up their TV all the time. No, they're not. No, they're not.
I guarantee you I've said that at some point in my career, but you're right. Well, sometimes we'll do these lockouts, the staff, we don't send engines on lockouts unless there's kids or dogs, but the battalion chiefs and myself and the staff will go do lockouts for just people with, we're going to put the locksmiths out of business. It's like, what? No, we're not. We're not doing this every 4 or 5 times a day. We're doing it maybe 3 or 4 times a month. No, we're not.
That's just
but the
justification for trying to be lazy. That's all that is.
And the people will hug you. And I had a lady crying one night. It was, because she was just I had another guy that was worried about being late to work and getting in trouble. I mean, we go on all day about that, but so it costs us nothing. It
does. You know what? You're exactly right. It costs literally nothing to make an impact in somebody's life. We like to be there when there's gunshots or we got to do CPR or house is on fire. But that good feeling that comes from that, you can get that from just helping an old lady get her bracelet off, or picking up a TV, or helping somebody that's in a car wreck be late. It's going to be late for a flight.
Yeah. Yeah.
It costs nothing, and from a selfish standpoint, it makes you feel good, and that's okay. It's okay to do our job and feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you this: we're winding down here. I got a couple more questions for you, but I want people. Here's what I want from my listeners: I want them to look up "No Exceptions to Leadership" by Jason Hoevelmann. Where are they going to get this book and Company Officer? How can they find this?
Amazon's the easiest place to get both of them. I will tell you that No Exceptions Leadership, I self-published, and if you got an early copy, I apologize because it's a big, long story, but it was poorly edited, and it was all my fault. But when I edited the first copy, I resubmitted the wrong version back to have printed, so the edits didn't show up in the first handful of books. So I apologize if you got a poorly edited book, and it's all my fault. But the other book went through fire engineering, and it's a little more expensive. But Amazon's the best place to find both of them. No Exceptions Leadership, and the New Company Officer is the one from fire engineering.
Outstanding. Now, are you have any speaking engagements coming up soon?
I do. So in October, I'm going to be in Iowa, and I don't remember exactly where. Maybe the Davenport area. I'd have to look. I apologize. And then I'm going to be in the Cincinnati, Ohio area in October as well. The first one is, I think, Iowa Fire Chiefs.
Cincinnati in October? Are you going to be there during Oktoberfest?
I don't know. It's about the see. So it's the. I'd have to look at the dates.
Check it out, because Cincinnati Oktoberfest is something to behold.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's just west of there, of where I'm going to be. But that's so the first class is in Iowa is a leadership and company officer development program. The Cincinnati one is a guard departments class, operations and command and considerations for guard departments. And then I'm going to upstate New York, or I guess middle of New York, like the Albany area, later in the month of October. And I'm doing another officer development leadership class there. Marthasville, Missouri in September. Oh, no, that's October too. I got a busy October. I'm going to be in New Mexico in February with Frank Viscuso and Rick Lasky at one of their conferences. Wow. It's going to be a lot of fun the way they've got it set up. So we're each doing like a day, and then we're doing a round table together. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then I will be in Iowa again in January, and I don't remember the name of that town either. I apologize.
I tell you what, if I would love to help get that information out there. If you email me,
I will.
I'll put, this should be up next Monday. I will add that information up there so everybody can, if they're in the area, they can come see you.
Yep, I will do that.
I want to start. I'm starting something brand new for 3-Point Firefighter tonight, and it's something I've been thinking about doing for a while. And you get to be the first person to do it. So we're going to end on this. I want you to tell me the best firehouse prank you've ever pulled or have had pulled on you.
So I'm going to give you one that was pulled on me, and I'm going to give you one that I pulled on someone else, if that's okay.
Nice.
So I'll start with the one I pulled on someone else, because the one that was pulled on me was better. So we had a captain, and great guy, wonderful, wonderful guy. I love him to death. Tall, real tall guy, but he has a tendency to sometimes resemble a bird with the way he walks and some of his features. And so we would affectionately refer to him as the bird. And one night we're sitting in the room watching some TV, and something comes on about turkeys or chickens, and one of the other guy goes, "Oh, hey, your family members are on the TV," you know? And I think it was one of those things, like you said, it just caught him at a bad time, you know, and he got mad and was storming and, you know, raising a fuss and whatnot. And so the next shift, we went out in the back, built him a nest on his bed.
You built an actual nest on his bed?
Yeah, we went out and collected leaves and sticks and twigs, and we built him a nest on his bed.
How do you take that?
For a few seconds, he was upset. Then he realized why he got the nest. And then he was like, oh, okay, all right, you know, because he got mad the night before, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in the corporate world, if somebody gets mad because you kind of pull a little prank or whatever, it usually ends there. In the fire service, that's just the beginning.
It's blood in the water. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the one that the second one?
Yeah, same crew. That particular time in my career at that house with that group was incredible. I mean, I've got stories for hours. It was the smallest engine house out of three of them, and anyway, so we were doing some RIT training at a neighboring city, just next door, and the Ford plant had closed, and so it was empty. And they had set up some obstacle courses, and we were doing some self-survival skills and obstacle course stuff and SCBA drills. And I remember putting my gloves on and getting ready to go through. And I remember all of a sudden it was kind of, you know, I go, man, I need to wash these when I get back. You know how you get sawdust and drywall and stuff. You need to really get these things cleaned. And we finished the drill and hot and sweaty, and we're at the very end of it. And the instructors are getting ready to debrief us. And I think they had some video or something. I don't remember. But the same captain who we built the nest for and I were the team. And we're taking off our helmets and our tanks, and I mean, just dripping sweat, you know. And I take my gloves off, and blood just starts running out of my hands. I mean, just dark red liquid just everywhere. And they're like, and the instructors, what'd you do? You know, they're all really concerned. Well, as I got closer to my hands, it smelled sweet. And what they had done at the firehouse is they had dumped 2 packs of cherry Kool-Aid in both my gloves before I went. And so that was the grit that I had in my gloves. And when I took them off, my hands were stained red for 2 weeks, you know.
Everywhere you're walking around, your hands are
everywhere. You know, my rotation on the ambulance, my hands were just, we went down for class, my hands were red. I mean, everywhere.
Man, yeah. I'll tell you what, for the first time doing this, you came out swinging.
Yeah.
Just the visual of the nest kills me.
Oh, it was great. It looked like Woodstock, you know, but it was big too. I mean, it was the complete size of his bed, you know, probably about this tall, you know. I mean, it was something that we put time into it too, you know. And then we filled the bottom with leaves, you know, so it was soft for him.
I love the fire service, man. I love it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Chief, thank you for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy. It's been an absolute honor for me. Love your book. For all my listeners, please pick up this book. I promise you, you'll read it, you'll go, okay, I get it, Barnes. It's awesome. So thank you, sir, for being on.
My pleasure. I had a great time. I can't thank you enough for asking me. I really appreciate it. An honor to be here. You're doing a great job, by the way. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Chief. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You have a good day and a great weekend, brother. Stay safe.
All right. You too. Thanks so much.
Today's podcast was sponsored by Fire Facilities, designers and manufacturers of realistic, built-to-last training structures and mobile units for 30 years. Make training count. Visit firefacilities.com for more information.